I got to say, Don Lemon is loving this. He hasn't had this much attention for years. Now, let's hear from LA Mayor Karen Bass, who claims that Don Lemon being arrested for storming a church during Sunday service is somehow a racial matter.
I have a particular message to Black America that it's interesting that I believe the journalists that were arrested all look like me and you.
10 seconds.
And so this is not the first time this has happened.
Yes.
As a matter of fact, the journalist that is with me, Jasmine, was arrested a few years ago.
Ami, what's your response to that? Is there a racial element in the prosecution of Don Lemon?
God. No. Look, Karen Bass is low-key one of the worst mayors in America. We don't talk about her enough is the problem. We talk about a lot of Mamdani. We talk about the mayor of Chicago, Brandon. Yeah, we got to talk a little more about, my resolution in 2026, talk more about Karen Bass. She's a horrible, absolute horrible mayor. Look, I know it seems like, I'm going to let people under the kimono a little bit here for the show. I know it seems like that when I do this like 15-minute interview every week, that I just kind of sit down, pop down, and then I just drop, knowledge all across the place. But the reality is I do show prep, okay? That's the truth. And look, she's kind of right that in 2025, under Trump, 32 journalists were arrested by Donald Trump. Yeah, that is absolutely true. Problem was in 2024, 49 journalists were arrested under the Biden administration. So I'm not sure that narrative actually works for her. Look, the truth is that, look, Don Lemon, full disclosure, kind of a friend of mine. I like Don. We talk on the phone a lot. We obviously are very different people. And I'm not going to, and this is not, our friendship is not going to color my next point, but I got to tell you, and by the way, he is loving it, of course. My God, after he was fired from CNN, he's never been more popular, of course. This was a godsend for him. Let's be totally honest, okay? He was the bore of irrelevancy. Sorry, Don. But now he's had this resurgence. Good for him. But the truth is, I don't think this was a good idea. I think this was a own goal by the Trump administration. You're just getting you're allowing people to hook sink their hooks onto an issue which is relatively irrelevant. And it's moving from the agenda and from what he really wants to accomplish. When they start saying, look, you're arresting journalists, Don Lemon wasn't doing anything. And look, do I think Don Lemon should have been arrested? I don't. As somebody who engaged in guerrilla journalism a lot, was he there? Did he have foreknowledge? Of course he did. Yes, he knew exactly what was going on. But this is kind of what journalists do. You don't get arrested for going on a ride along with criminals. Just kind of the reality. It's a fine line. There's a FACE Act, and he may have crossed that line there. I get it. But the more important thing is I think it's distracting.
That legislation. That legislation exists. I do agree it's distracting, and you can look at it as an own goal because the left is going to run a particular narrative here about the media being oppressed and free speech being breached, all that nonsense. But he, on the face of it, appears to have broken the law. You can't go storming churches during Sunday service, terrifying families, including small children, and then just say I was doing journalism. You'd be arrested if you did that in a mosque or if it happened really any place other than a church. It seems like anything goes. But before you go, I want to get your take on what's happening in New York right now. The new mayor there, Zohran Mamdani, has overseen a tragic period where 16 people have died during this cold snap you're having. Mamdani ordered the NYPD not to tear down homeless encampments. And Ami, that act of so-called compassion has arguably contributed to more suffering and the tragic outcome of 10 people dead in a single weekend in the freezing cold.
Yeah, and unfortunately, get ready for more of that as we go forward because we're going to be cutting down on services because we have to, because his spending agenda is so out of whack. He wants to spend $100 million for transgender healthcare services. Look, I don't know why that has to be an additional $100 million. I mean, can they get regular healthcare services? I don't understand what's going on. What is that money for? They're calculating almost $3 billion in lost revenues because he's going to allow fare jumpers on the subway system, and he wants to make the buses free. All of these things are going to bring the New York economy to a standstill, okay? And it's going to be back to what it was in 1975 when the city almost declared bankruptcy. It really kind of did, just optically it didn't. And that led to 5,000 police officers that were cut back, 6,000 firefighters. Imagine the loss of life then, and what will happen now if we have to do that again. And we will have to do that again because he is spending money, his spending priorities are like a leftist Marxist. And by the way, in addition to that, wait until he tries to bring, and what he's trying to do is bring more real estate, more apartments in New York under the rubric, under the federal government. As we know, the federal government is great in making sure that people have heat in the wintertime and air conditioning in the summertime. Just go ask the people who live in housing developments all across New York City what it's like in the wintertime and the summertime. So we're going to see a lot more of this, unfortunately.
You know what, Ami, you voted for it and you're going to get it. And my sympathy levels are at an all-time low because you have a choice here and you keep voting in these dangerous, hard lefties.